What's up, everyone? Welcome back to another review. This time we're taking a look at Troy, directed by Wolfgang Petersen. Now, Troy is based off the story of the Iliad by the ancient Greek philosopher Homer. Now, to make it very, very simple, Troy is basically this. This Trojan named Paris went to Sparta. He saw the beautiful Helen. He took Helen away from Sparta. This upsetted the king of Sparta, known as Menelaus. Menelaus went to his brother Agamemnon, and the both of them put their forces together to try and get Helen back and to take over Sparta. That's pretty much the story in a nutshell. But that's the skeleton of the story. Let's talk about the meat of the story. I think that Troy as a movie is really, really, really good. Now, it has a lot of things in it that don't really have a whole lot of substance to it, but overall, I think this is a really well-made, well-crafted, well-directed movie, and I thought Wolfgang Petersen did a fantastic job at bringing ancient Greece to life. From a production value standpoint, this movie looks absolutely gorgeous. From a production design, from wardrobes, from special effects, I think Wolfgang Petersen did a fabulous job at bringing ancient Greece to life. Everything looks authentic and realistic. The cast in this movie is extremely good. Brad Pitt plays Achilles. Achilles was one of the greatest Greek warriors that ever lived, and I thought Brad Pitt played the role really, really well. He's badass in the role. Achilles has a lot of antagonistic relationships in this movie, and he also has a lot of friendly relationships in this movie. And I think Brad Pitt has a good chemistry with most of the people he shares screen time with. I love the relationship between Brad Pitt and the Sean Bean character of Odysseus. Odysseus is the king of Ithaca, and Odysseus and Achilles have a mutual liking for one another, and I like that they have like a little bit of a mentorship going on. I like the relationship between Achilles and his cousin Patroclus, who Achilles is training to be a warrior. I think that was really well handled, especially when you get to later on in the movie where Patroclus is killed off by Hector, which sets off Achilles to get involved into the Trojan War. For most of the Trojan War, Achilles is mostly on the sidelines, really not having a stake in this battle until his cousin is killed by Hector. That's when Achilles really gets into the battle. And in order to buy that, you have to buy the relationship with his cousin Patroclus, and understate that there's like a love between the two, which I think Brad Pitt and Garrett Hedlund do fairly well. They play off really well off one another. The antagonistic relationship between Achilles and Agamemnon, played by Brian Cox, is great stuff. I love Brian Cox. I think Brian Cox in this movie is just that right amount of over the top, and he is just cheesing it up playing this villain, and you can tell the man's having a good time, and you can just tell that he's enjoying himself with this thing. And again, one of the things I like is the antagonistic relationship between Achilles and Agamemnon, and that relationship is what causes Achilles to really not put his best effort within the Trojan War itself because of his disdain for one king. But the rest of the army, they all worship Achilles, and the Greek army feels at ease if Achilles is by their side, that they have a fighting chance to win wars. So it's kind of a double-edged sword in a way. Achilles hates Agamemnon, but the soldiers respect him for how good he is and how many battles he's won. So it's great stuff all the way around. The romance between Achilles and this character called Briseis, played by Rose Byrne, I like it. It's actually a very parallel romance to Paris and Helena. Now, Paris and Helen are played by Orlando Bloom and Diane Kruger, and I think that they have a good chemistry with. I think that Bloom and Kruger have a good chemistry with one another. We have to buy this romance as being the starting point of these chain of events, and I think Bloom and Kruger played their roles fairly well, and I think it works for me. They work well with one another, and I buy the romance. But the romance that really got me more interested was the Achilles and Briseis romance. Achilles is a man, all he knows is war. Now he meets this priestess in a way, and it kind of softens him up a little bit. He kind of lets his guard down a little bit. And we see the battle-hardened Achilles starts to develop a bit of a soft spot for this Briseis character. And when Achilles is killed off at the end, we feel the tragedy. Every Greek story has to have a tragedy. So we feel the tragedy when Achilles is killed by Paris, and Briseis, when we feel the pain, and we feel that pain. So all that really, really well handled. It's good stuff. Now, Hector is played by Eric Bana, and I thought Eric Bana did a great job playing Hector. He's a badass. Hector is pretty much the Trojans' version of Achilles. He is their greatest warrior. And Achilles and Hector do have a brutal fight near the end of this movie, which is caused when Hector kills Achilles' cousin Patroclus after Patroclus has disguised himself as Achilles, and that's when Hector kills him. This was starts off a fight between the two. But other than that, the movie did a good job at teasing and planting seeds for this eventual fight. And all it took was Hector accidentally killing Achilles' cousin to get Achilles into this war. And again, Hector and Achilles have a very entertaining fight scene. I like it a lot. Another good fight scene is between Menelaus and Paris, which is what this movie was really centered about, is Paris and Menelaus. Since Paris stole Menelaus from Helen. And they have a brutal fight where Menelaus nearly kills Paris right in front of all the Trojans. Right in front of all the Trojans. So that was good stuff too. This movie also has Peter O'Toole, who plays King Priam, and I like Peter O'Toole in this movie. I thought he did the role really, really well. He comes across as a very loving, fatherly figure who genuinely loves his city, genuinely loves his family, and is deeply religious to the gods of Greece, as he has the faith that they can protect him. Of course, as we all know, the Trojan horse, the Greeks infiltrate Troy by building the Trojan horse as a way to trick him, and yes, Wolfgang Petersen relishes in showing the sacking of Troy. The Greeks are brutal, vicious people, raping women, killing babies, torching this place, bringing it all to the ground. It's glorious and it's visceral. Speaking of glorious and visceral, a number of the action sequences in this movie are glorious and visceral. Not just the individual fight scenes that I mentioned, but the overall war part of this movie. It's great stuff. It's brutal, it's bloody, it's everything you want in a movie like this. So, I think that this movie, this movie does also try to juggle a lot of subplots, and I think a lot of those plots kind of fall by the wayside, or to me, they just don't really go anywhere special. And you could have easily cut them out of the movie, and this movie would have been absolutely fine. It wouldn't have made much of a difference. Actually, it would have made it much more streamlined in a way. Because this movie really should have just focused on the dueling relationships between, Achilles and Briseis, and the Paris and Helena relationship, and the overall conquering of Troy, which eventually happens when the Greeks infiltrate Troy at the end of the movie. Which is what leads to the death of Achilles, and most of the Trojans finding refuge on Mount Ida after they managed to escape through underground tunnels that Hector has showed his wife earlier on in the movie. So yeah, pretty much those are just my thoughts on Troy. I overall really enjoyed this movie. I like Troy a lot, and I'm going to give it a solid 8 out of 10. Great production value, excellent directing, entertaining action sequences, a solid and great cast. If you've not seen Troy, give it a watch. I think you'll enjoy it. Anyway, those are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comment section down below. Like the video and subscribe, and I'll check you back next time for more.